Long ago, in the heart of Italy, there stood a city called Rome. It was a city of stone streets, open markets, and busy people. The year was 27 BC. The sun rose slowly over the 7 hills of Rome. Birds flew over marble roofs. The Tiber River flowed quietly, as it had for centuries. This was a time of change. For many years, Rome had been a republic. That meant the people had a say in government. But the republic had become weak. There were too many fights, too many wars, too many leaders who wanted all the power for themselves. One man stood above the rest. His name was Octavian. He was smart, he was calm, and he was patient. He was also the adopted son of Julius Caesar, who had been a powerful leader before him. After many battles, Octavian brought peace. The people were tired of war. They wanted quiet. They wanted safety. Octavian gave them that, and so the Senate of Rome gave him a new name. They called him Augustus. It meant the honored one. Augustus did not call himself a king, but he had the power of one. The old republic was gone. In its place stood something new. The Roman Empire was born. Augustus was the first emperor. The people of Rome did not fight this change. They were ready. They wanted peace. They wanted order. They wanted to sleep at night without fear. Under Augustus, they did. He fixed broken roads. He built new ones. He cleaned the city. He made laws fairer. He paid his soldiers. He made sure food reached the people. He gave grain to the poor. Under Augustus, Rome grew strong. The empire stretched across land and sea. It reached from Spain in the west to Syria in the east, from Britain in the north to Egypt in the south. A giant world under one name, Rome. But life was not only about power. In the city, children played in the courtyards. Farmers brought grapes and olives to market. Poets wrote stories by candlelight. Women swept their homes as the smell of bread filled the air. Temples stood tall, shining in the sun. The people believed in many gods. They gave thanks to Jupiter, Mars, Venus, and others. They lit small lamps in their homes. They whispered prayers in quiet corners. Every evening, as the sky turned orange, people gathered in the forums. They talked. They listened. They shared news and stories. They felt proud to be Roman. They felt like they were part of something big. But deep down, no one knew what would come next. No one knew how long the peace would last. But for now, they rested. They worked. They lived. And Augustus watched over it all. He did not speak with loud words. He did not need to. His work showed his strength. He ruled with care. He listened to wise men. He looked at the stars. He trusted time. He also passed new rules to help the family. He wanted people to marry, to have children, to love Rome and make it grow. He gave rewards to those who built strong homes. Art and music also bloomed. Writers like Virgil and Horace wrote poems that people still remember. Statues were made from stone. They showed gods, heroes, and emperors. They stood in gardens and temples watching the people walk by. The empire was like a great machine. Every part had a place. Farmers grew food. Builders raised cities. Soldiers kept peace. Teachers gave lessons. Everything moved together, like a song. Even at night, the city did not sleep. Oil lamps lit narrow streets. Merchants closed their shops. Guards walked slowly by the city walls. Dogs barked in the dark. Somewhere, a mother told her child a story of Romulus and Remus, the two brothers who started it all. Augustus stayed emperor for a long time. He ruled for over 40 years. When he grew old, people whispered his name with respect. When he died, many wept. They said he found Rome a city of brick and left it a city of marble. The world he built did not end with him. His dream lived on. Rome would rise even higher, and one day it would also fall. But that is another part of the story. For now, we remember the birth, the soft beginning of something great. A time when peace returned. A time when people walked slowly under Roman skies. A time when the world changed, gently under the name of Augustus. Now, close your eyes. Imagine the hills of Rome, the warm breeze, the sound of sandals on stone. You are safe. You are home. The empire has just begun. The wars had ended. The soldiers had returned home. For the first time in many years, the empire was quiet. This long peace was called the Pax Romana. It meant Roman peace, and it lasted for about 200 years. In this time, Rome became calm. No more battles. No more fires in the cities. People began to feel safe again. And when people feel safe, life begins to grow. The streets were cleaner. The shops were open. Children played in courtyards and gardens. The air smelled of bread, herbs, and warm olive oil. Fountains made gentle sounds as water flowed. And everywhere you looked, life was moving slowly, gently. In the mornings, Rome woke with the soft light of the sun. People walked to the market. They greeted each other with smiles and simple words. Salve, they would say. It means hello, in Latin. Neighbors knew each other. Children ran between stalls. The bakers sold fresh loaves of bread still warm from the fire. Fishmongers called out their catch of the day. And farmers brought baskets full of grapes, olives, and figs. The markets were full of color. Red apples, golden honey, bright fabrics. People haggled gently over prices, but there was no rush. Time moved slowly under the Roman sky. People didn't just live in the city. They also lived in quiet towns and green countryside. There were villas, large country houses, with gardens, with fountains, with trees that swayed in the wind. Inside, families shared quiet meals. They sat on low couches. They dipped bread into bowls of olive oil. They ate lentils, cheese, and sweet cakes made with honey. Roman homes had courtyards in the middle. These were open spaces under the sky. Birds would rest on the stone walls. Potted plants made the air smell fresh, and small fountains added soft music to the day. In the towns, people walked on stone roads. These roads were wide and smooth, built by Roman hands. They stretched across the empire, from Spain to Syria, from Britain to North Africa. You could travel for weeks and still be on a Roman road. Along the roads were way stations, places to rest, to eat, to water your horse. Messengers moved between cities quickly. Letters were carried from one end of the empire to the other. A man in Rome could write a letter to his brother in Egypt, and in a few weeks it would arrive. The letter might say, "The harvest was good this year. The olives are full and sweet. I hope your children are well. I miss the scent of your garden." These words connected families across great distances. Even when apart, people stayed close through ink and thought. In the cities, life was full of activity, but also calm. People visited bathhouses, not just to bathe, but to talk, rest, and relax. The water was warm. The rooms were quiet. There was laughter, but it was soft. Friends spoke of poetry, politics, and the stars. It was a place to let the day slow down. Bathhouses had many rooms. A hot room, a warm room, a cold room. People moved through them slowly. Each step brought peace to the body and mind. After the bath, people often walked through gardens. Public gardens were everywhere, with marble statues, with flowers, with shade from tall trees. Old men read scrolls on benches. Young lovers walked hand in hand, and the world felt safe. At home, people wrote letters. They painted. They told stories to children. And as the sun set, the homes grew quiet. Oil lamps gave soft light, and outside the stars began to glow. People slept safely under Roman stars. That was the gift of peace, to sleep and not worry, to dream without fear, to hear the soft wind through olive trees and know tomorrow will be calm too. Even the soldiers found rest. Many of them became farmers, or builders, or guards at the city gates. They wore simple tunics. They planted grapevines. They taught their sons how to use a plow instead of a sword. In the temples, priests offered prayers for peace, for good harvests, for the health of the emperor. People lit candles and left flowers. The smell of incense filled the air, and bells rang gently at dusk. Children went to school. They learned to read and write. They used wax tablets and simple books. They studied Latin and Greek. They learned about stars, rivers, and gods. At night, the city lights glowed softly. You could hear the sound of sandals on stone, the quiet talk of a couple walking home, the distant bark of a dog, and the soft call of a night bird. It was not a perfect world. There was still hunger in some homes, still illness, still sadness. But there was also hope. There was time. There was peace. And peace is a gentle thing. It comes without shouting. It moves like a breeze. It fills your days slowly, and it teaches you to rest, to breathe, to live. The Pax Romana lasted 200 years. 200 years of calm roads, it is slow meals, of quiet nights, and though the world would change again, for this time, Rome was at peace. The people were safe, and the stars above Rome shone down gently, just as they had for centuries. The stars still watched over Rome, and under their soft light, the city kept growing. Peace had made life better, but it was strong emperors who helped Rome rise even higher. Some emperors were wise. Some were kind. They ruled not with fear, but with care. They thought of the people. They built, protected, and listened. One of the best emperors was named Trajan. He came from Spain. He was brave, but also fair. He loved Rome, and Rome loved him back. Trajan built new roads. He opened markets. He gave food to the poor. He made sure the army was strong. But he also built places for people to gather. He built a large forum, a kind of town square. It had tall columns, shops, libraries, statues, and in the middle there was a great column with stories carved in stone. The carvings showed his battles, his victories, but they were not just about war. They were about leadership, about guiding people. Under Trajan, Rome became larger than ever before. The empire stretched from the deserts of the Middle East to the forests of northern Europe. From the sands of Africa to the cliffs of Britain, from seas to skies, Rome stood proud. After Trajan came another emperor named Hadrian. He was thoughtful. He loved learning. He traveled across the empire more than most rulers. He wanted to see the people. He wanted to understand their lives. Hadrian visited far-off places. He walked in markets. He listened to farmers. He met soldiers. He watched the sunset from hills and from seaports. In Britain, he saw trouble. The northern tribes wanted to fight. So Hadrian built a wall, a long, strong wall made of stone. It marked the edge of Rome's power. It was called Hadrian's Wall, and parts of it still stand today. But Hadrian was not just a builder of walls. He built temples. He rebuilt the Pantheon in Rome. Its dome was wide like the sky. Inside, light poured through the round hole at the top. It felt like standing inside a star. Hadrian also loved gardens. He built a villa near Rome. It had ponds, trees, and statues. He would walk there in the evenings, quiet, thinking, looking at the moon reflected in the water. After Hadrian came Marcus Aurelius. He was different. He was a thinker, a philosopher. He wrote his thoughts in a book. He asked himself, what is good? What is right? How should I live? Even though he was emperor, he stayed humble. He worked hard. He read every day. He believed in peace, but he had to fight wars too. Not for glory, but to protect the empire. Marcus Aurelius wrote during hard times. There were plagues. There were battles. But still, he stayed calm. He said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Real strength comes from inside. People remembered him as a wise and just ruler. He cared for the people. He walked through the streets quietly. He gave to the poor. He listened to advice. Under these good emperors, Rome grew in more ways than size. It grew in wisdom, in beauty, in heart. Cities blossomed across the empire. In Gaul, in Egypt, in Syria, in Africa. Each one had theaters, baths, forums, and fountains. In schools, children learned to read and write. They copied poems and letters. They studied nature and stars. They learned about justice, duty, and respect. Writers and thinkers shared their ideas. Doctors studied herbs and surgery. Engineers built bridges, roads, and aqueducts. Water flowed across the land, carried by stone channels. It brought clean water to homes and fountains. It made cities healthy and green. In the libraries, scrolls were copied by hand. Words passed from one person to another. Thoughts were shared across time. And as the empire grew, people from many lands became part of Rome. They spoke many languages. They wore many clothes. But they all became Romans. A merchant from Egypt, a farmer from Gaul, a soldier from Syria, all part of one world. One Rome. Temples rose with columns reaching toward the sky. Theaters echoed with laughter and songs. The ships sailed between Roman ports, carrying grain, wine, glass, and silk. Each day, the sun rose over a different part of the empire, but it always rose on Rome. And as the light touched the seas and fields, people worked. People rested. People dreamed. They dreamed of peace, of safety, of family. And for many years, those dreams lived under the care of good emperors. Rome stretched from deserts to forests, from seas to skies, and under the stars, the people of Rome continued their lives, softly, steadily, together. The Roman Empire was large and full of life. It was more than armies and emperors. It was full of people. People with dreams, work, and daily joys. From sunrise to moonlight, the empire breathed in peace. And in that peace, life moved gently. People woke up to the smell of bread, to the songs of birds, to the warm light shining on stone streets. Let us take a quiet walk through the empire. Let us meet the people, not in palaces, but in homes. Not in battles, but in gardens, schools, and markets. Far in the west, in the green lands of Gaul, there lived a farmer named Lucius. He rose early, before the sun. He tied his sandals. He kissed his wife's hand. He stepped outside, breathing the cool morning air. His land was rich and wide. There were rows of grapes, fields of wheat, trees full of figs and olives. Each day, Lucius worked with care. He loved the earth. He talked to his oxen. He hummed while he worked. Sometimes his son helped him. They laughed together while they pulled weeds. They shared bread under the shade. Lucius taught his son how to plant, how to be patient, how to wait for the harvest. And in the evening, when the sky turned gold, Lucius looked at his land. He saw what peace had given him. A full basket, a quiet home, a soft breeze over the hills. In the south, across the sea, the city of Alexandria stood tall. Its lighthouse shined bright over the harbor. Ships came from every corner of the world. They brought spices, cloth, scrolls, and wine. In one corner of the city, a baker named Amara worked in her small shop. She woke before the stars faded. She mixed flour with water and salt. She shaped dough with her hands. She sang softly as the oven warmed. The smell of fresh bread filled the air. People lined up outside. Children pointed to honey cakes. Soldiers asked for thick loaves. Scribes took bread with figs and nuts. Amara smiled at each one. She remembered their names. She gave extra to the old man down the street. She wrapped sweet rolls for the temple boy. Her shop was small but full of warmth. She swept the floor with care. She placed flowers by the window. She ended her day by lighting a small candle, thankful, peaceful, happy to feed her neighbors. To the east, under the blue sky of Greece, in the city of Athens, lived a teacher named Diodorus. He was old, with white hair and soft eyes. Each morning he walked to the school with a scroll under his arm. Children waited under the olive trees. They sat on stone benches. They listened as Diodorus read poems, tales of heroes and stars, stories of justice and kindness. He did not shout. He spoke gently. He asked questions. He listened to answers. He smiled when a child said something wise. In the afternoon, he taught writing. The children copied letters on wax tablets. They learned slowly, one word at a time. He said, "Words are seeds. Plant them well." Diodorus loved his students. He brought grapes for them on hot days. He showed them the constellations at night. He reminded them to think, to feel, to care. In the evenings, he sat by his window. He watched the stars. He wrote small thoughts in his notebook. He felt joy in the quiet. In the passing of another simple day, across the empire there were many like them. Mothers weaving cloth in Syria, fishermen in Carthage, pulling nets, artists painting mosaics in Rome, musicians playing soft tunes in Cappadocia, shepherds guiding sheep in the hills of Judea. They all lived different lives, but they all shared the same sky, the same empire, the same wish for peace. On feast days, people gathered in town squares. They wore clean robes, they lit lanterns, they shared fruit and laughter. Dancers twirled. Drums echoed through the streets. Children ran with garlands in their hair. At night, homes were lit by oil lamps. Fathers told stories by the fire. Mothers rocked babies to sleep. Old ones prayed softly. Young ones dreamed deeply. And through it all, the empire watched over them. Roads stayed strong. Bridges held firm. Water flowed in aqueducts. Guards stood by the gates. Peace was not just a word. It was real. It was felt. The empire was not perfect. But in these moments, in these quiet daily joys, it was beautiful. In one city, a potter shaped clay. He made bowls in jars. He marked them with small symbols. He did not seek fame, but his hands made useful things. In another town, a girl learned to read. Her father saved coins to buy her scrolls. She dreamed of becoming a healer. She studied herbs. She watched birds. She asked questions. In yet another place, two friends sat by a river. They said nothing. They watched the water move. They watched the clouds pass. They felt time slow down. From sunrise to moonlight, the empire lived in moments like these. Rome was not only stone and power. It was breath. It was laughter. It was a hand holding another hand. And while emperors ruled from marble halls, real life bloomed in farms, markets, schools, and homes. The empire was wide, but the heart of Rome beat quietly in every corner, in every smile, in every loaf of bread, in every kind word. And as the stars returned to the sky, the people of the empire rested again. They slept under roofs they had built, on land they had worked, in towns they had shaped, together. And while farmers worked in Gaul, bakers smiled in Alexandria, and teachers taught in Athens, the heart of it all beat quietly in the city of Rome. The eternal city. It did not rush. It did not sleep. It breathed like an old tree, strong, is still, full of memory. Let us take a slow walk now. Let us walk through the streets of Rome. As the morning sun warms the roofs, as birds fly over the tiled houses, as people wake to a new day, we step onto a stone path. It is smooth under our feet, worn by thousands of years, worn by sandals and wheels, by kings and workers, by poets and soldiers. The city opens like a book. Each corner tells a story. To the left we see a fountain. Clear water flows from the mouth of a lion. Children laugh as they splash their hands. A woman fills a clay jar. She smiles as drops fall onto her dress. Behind her, a merchant sets up his stall. He sells bright cloth from the east, reds and purples, soft silks that dance in the breeze. He calls to passing shoppers with a gentle voice. We turn and walk deeper into the city. Tall columns rise on both sides. They hold up temples made of white marble. We pass the temple of Jupiter. Its steps shine in the morning light. A priest lights incense. The smell is sweet and slow. People stop to whisper prayers. They bow their heads. Some close their eyes. Not far from there, music begins. A flute, a lyre, soft notes that float through the air. A young man plays near the fountain. Children gather around him. An old woman hums along. The music follows us as we walk, down a narrow street, past walls with painted vines, past doors with fresh flowers hanging. We enter a small square. Shadows stretch across the stones. An artist sits on a bench. He draws a statue in his notebook. It is a statue of a goddess, tall, strong, with flowing robes. The statue stands in the center of the square. Birds rest on her arms. Water flows at her feet. She watches the city with stone eyes, eyes that have seen emperors rise and fall. We sit on a bench nearby. People pass us slowly. A mother with her daughter. A baker carrying a basket. Two men in quiet talk. Above us, green vines hang from a balcony. A cat walks along the edge. It stretches in the sun. Below, a boy chases a butterfly. We rise and walk again, through arches, past courtyards, along paths lined with shops. A perfume seller offers a small jar. The scent is light, like flowers at night. We thank her and keep walking. Soon, we reach the Great Forum, the center of old Rome. Here, the past feels close. Voices echo from the stones. Words once spoken by senators and poets. Marble whispered stories with every step. The columns here are taller, the statues larger. Each one tells a tale. A general on horseback. A goddess with a shield. A young man with a scroll. We pause to listen. Not with ears but with heart. The city is not loud. It speaks softly. In the rustle of trees. In the splash of fountains. In the quiet footsteps of people walking home. We leave the forum, and follow the road to the baths. The public bathhouse is large. Steam rises from its roof. Inside, people talk and laugh. Some swim. Some rest in warm water. Others read on benches. The walls are painted with birds and gardens. The floors are made of tiny stones. Each stone is part of a picture. A dolphin, a flower, a star. We dip our hands in the water. It is warm, still, calm. As we leave, the sun is higher now. Children run through the streets. Vendors shout gently. Bells ring in the distance. We walk toward the Palatine Hill. There, the wind is cooler. The view opens wide. From the top, we see the city spread out. Roofs and roads, temples and towers. People like tiny dots. Moving slowly below. Beyond the city, the Tiber River flows. It moves like a ribbon, soft and silver in the light. The sky above is blue and open. Birds fly in circles. Clouds pass like dreams. Rome, the eternal city, stands below us. It has grown. It has changed. But it still holds the same breath. A breath of marble and music, of water and words, of footsteps and silence. We sit on the hill and watch. Time feels slow here. The wind speaks in soft tones. The stones hold ancient warmth. And as the day begins to fade, the light turns gold. Shadows stretch again. Lamps are lit in the streets. People return home. And we too begin to walk back. Slowly, quietly, the eternal city behind us. Still breathing, still whispering, still watching the stars rise once more. The sun still set gently over the rooftops of Rome. Children still laughed by the fountains. People still walked slowly through the marble streets. But something quiet was changing. Something far away, yet slowly coming closer. It started like a whisper. Not loud, not sudden, just a feeling. A colder wind sometimes blew through the city gates. Merchants from the borders spoke in low voices. They brought stories of trouble, of distant lands growing restless, of new tribes gathering near the edges of the empire. The streets of Rome still shone in the light. But in the corners, people began to speak in softer tones. In the north, near the rivers and forests, soldiers stood watch more often. They built more walls, more towers. They trained longer. Not because war had come, but because they felt it might. The empire was wide. It stretched from deserts to mountains, from cold lands to warm seas. But even great empires feel the winds change. In the markets, prices began to rise. Wheat cost more. Salt, once cheap, became precious. The baker still opened his shop each morning. But some people bought less. Some days they only looked. A father held his son's hand. They stood by the fruit cellar. The boy pointed to sweet figs. The father smiled softly, but he shook his head. Taxes grew heavier. More coins were asked from each family. A farmer in Gaul gave part of his harvest. A blacksmith in Spain gave part of his earnings. Even the quiet teacher in Athens paid more each season. They did not shout. They did not protest. They simply gave what they could, and hoped it would be enough. Letters from the provinces reached the city. Some were cheerful. Some told of good harvests. But others spoke of worry, of roads not repaired, of rivers flooding, of governors too strict or too distant. The empire was still whole, still strong, but it felt tired, like an old lion. Still proud, still noble, but slower to rise. Even the eternal city felt it. One evening, a poet sat near the old fountain. He had written many words in his life, songs of love, songs of war. But now he wrote something new. He dipped his pen in ink, and on smooth parchment he wrote, "The roads still shine, but the dust feels different." He read the line aloud, then looked up at the stars. They still sparkled, but they felt farther away. In the army camps along the borders, the soldiers watched the forests. Sometimes smoke rose in the distance. They listened for footsteps in the trees. They lit fires at night and held their swords close. In one camp, a young man from Rome stood guard. He missed his home. He missed the soft bread, the warm baths, the music in the square. Here, the nights were cold, and the ground was hard. He wrote a letter to his sister. He said, "I am well, but the sky here feels heavy. Not all people noticed the change. Not yet. In many places, life went on. A girl in Carthage still danced in the market square. A painter in Ephesus still added gold to temple walls. A couple in Antioch still lit candles each evening. But change does not always shout. Sometimes, it just waits. In Rome, the senators met as always. They wore fine robes. They spoke with careful words. But their faces held small lines. Lines of worry. They had ruled for centuries. Now they spoke of new laws, new armies, new ways to hold the empire together. Some said we must build stronger walls. Others said we must listen to the people. A few said nothing at all. Even the statues seemed to watch them. In the streets, people still told stories. But more often now, those stories ended with silence, with a sigh, with a long pause. Still Rome was beautiful. The fountains still danced, the temples still shone. But the shadows at the edges were growing. They were not dark yet. Not deep, but they were there, like clouds far away. Like thunder that has not yet reached the ear. One night, an old man stood by the Tiber River. He had lived his whole life in Rome. He had seen emperors come and go. He had walked these streets since he was a boy. He looked at the water and said to no one, "I remember when everything felt forever." Then he smiled, a soft, sad smile, and turned to walk home. The stars still watched from above. The moon still floated high. But even they knew something was changing. Slowly, softly. Like the first leaves falling at the start of autumn, the empire still breathed. But it breathed deeper now, as if preparing for a long night. Even great empires feel the winds change. The wind that once whispered now began to speak. The sky above Rome still looked calm, but cracks had begun to form below. Small at first, barely seen, but the cracks grew deeper. The roads still stretched far, but fewer men walked them with joy. More soldiers, more messengers, fewer poets, fewer smiles. The eagle of Rome had flown high, over mountains, over seas, but now it had flown too far, too fast, and it had forgotten its nest. The cities at the edges called for help. Trouble was near, but Rome was tired. The armies were split. The rulers argued. And then came the storm. Not one storm, but many. A plague entered through the ports. It came in silence, like a shadow. People coughed. People grew cold. People stopped moving. In towns, doors stayed shut. In homes, candles burned all night. Mothers held their children close. Priests prayed quietly. The temples stayed full. The markets stayed empty. And while the people feared sickness, the empire tore itself apart. One emperor rose, then another, then another. One fought with swords, another with words. A third ruled for weeks, a fourth for days. At one time there were 3 emperors, then 4, then 5. Each claimed to be the true ruler. Each had his own army. Each wanted the golden crown. Soldiers no longer marched for Rome. They marched for their general, for pay, for land. In the east, a city rose in power. In the west, another broke away. Rome was no longer one voice. It was many voices speaking over each other. A merchant from Egypt carried grain, but pirates stopped his ship. No one came to help. A farmer in Gaul saw smoke on the hills. No one came to stop it. Even the walls of Rome felt unsure. Stones once placed with care now crumbled. The legions once proud now marched with tired feet. Some wore old armor. Some had no shoes. Many had no hope. The fields were dry. The rivers were low. Trade slowed. Coins were made with less silver. People noticed. People whispered. A baker held a coin and said, "This once bought 5 loaves. Now it buys 1. A mother said to her child, "Stay close. The streets are not like before." Stories changed. Once people told tales of gods and heroes. Now they spoke of lost towns, of missing roads, of leaders who broke promises. Even the stars above seemed dimmer. In some places, new kings rose. They called themselves emperors too. They built walls. They made their own laws. But they were not Rome. They were pieces of a broken mirror. Each showed part of the picture. None showed it all. The land was too wide. The problems too many. The heart of the empire could not beat fast enough for every limb. And still, the people tried. They lit their lamps. They opened their shops. They sang old songs, but their voices were softer now, their steps slower. In a quiet village near the Rhine, a boy asked his grandfather, "Will Rome come here?" The old man smiled, but his eyes were far away. "Rome was here once," he said, "but now it watches from a distance." A teacher in Athens wrote in her book, "Rome ruled the world. Now the world feels large again." The empire had stretched like a great tree, its branches wide, its roots deep, but now, some branches broke, some leaves fell. Not all at once, but slowly, quietly, and still Rome remained. Not strong, not whole, but still standing, like an old lion in the sun, scars on its face, but eyes still open. People remembered the old days, when the streets were filled with music, when the baths were full of laughter, when Rome felt endless. Now they whispered those memories to their children, like bedtime stories, soft and warm, but fading. In the middle of this chaos, one small truth stayed strong. The people still lived, still loved, still hoped. A girl in Alexandria still painted seashells. A boy in Carthage still played the flute. A farmer in Sicily still kissed his wife at sunrise. The empire was not gone, but it was no longer whole. The eagle had flown too far. It saw too many skies, and forgot its nest. Now it turned its wings back to its heart, back to its roots. But the journey would not be easy. The path home was long. The world had changed, and Rome would have to change too. The winds still whispered over Rome. They carried stories of loss, but now they also carried a new name, Constantine. He came like a calm wave, not loud, not rushed, but steady, with quiet strength. Rome was tired. Its bones were old. But Constantine looked ahead. He saw something more. He did not give up. He walked where emperors had fallen. He stood where battles had torn the land. But his eyes stayed clear. He dreamed of peace again, and light. He knew Rome could not go on like before. It had stretched too far, thought too much, broken too often. So he did something bold, something new. He turned east. The East was rich. It had trade. It had gold. It had strong cities. And above all, it had hope. There beside the sea near the old Greek lands, he saw a city, a place with hills, a place kissed by water, a place open to the winds of change. He named it Nova Roma, the new Rome. But people would call it something else. They would call it Constantinople. Stones were laid with care. Walls rose. Temples gleamed. Statues stood tall. It was a city of both past and future. Old wisdom lived there. New dreams grew beside it. People came from all corners of the empire. Sailors, traders, teachers, builders, mothers with babies wrapped in cloth, fathers looking for work, children laughing near fountains, the streets filled with voices. Again, not shouts of war, but the soft hum of daily life. And Constantine gave them something more. A new faith, a quiet faith, a belief in one God, a God of light, of peace, of kindness. He saw how the old gods no longer brought comfort. Too many names, too many statues, too many rules. The people needed one name, one path. And so Constantine became the first Roman emperor to follow the Christian God. Not by sword, not by force, but by choice. He built churches, simple at first, open, filled with sunlight. One church stood taller than the rest. In the old city of Rome, he built the great church of St. Peter, a quiet place, a holy place. Priests now walked beside soldiers. Crosses were carved next to eagles. And slowly, hearts began to soften. Not all at once, not everywhere, but it began. In Constantinople, the new city, time moved differently. It was still Rome, but with a gentler step. The streets had domes instead of columns. The music sounded softer. The air felt like a morning breeze after long winter nights. People planted gardens between walls. They painted homes in bright colors. Markets sold fruit from Asia and cloth from Africa. It was still an empire, but one that listened more, that prayed more, And yet the old Rome still stood. In the west its temples grew quiet. Its walls cracked. But the east was alive. Constantinople became the beating heart. It carried the old dreams, but it also whispered new ones. At night, lamps glowed by the sea. Sailboats rested in the harbor. Monks read by candlelight. Children watched the stars, and Constantine watched over them all. He walked through his city, not with a crown, but with thought and care. He spoke of peace, of unity, of one Rome, not many. And though he grew old, his dream stayed young. When he passed, the city did not stop. It grew, it lived, and the people remembered. They said, he lit a candle in the east to save the fading west. And that light burned on. It shined in domes, in books, in songs, and though the old empire would one day fall, the new one would rise. Stronger in spirit, gentler in heart. The empire was changing. It was not a fall, but a turning, a leaf on the wind, spinning softly toward something new. And in the center, Constantine's city stood like a lighthouse, a safe place, a calm place, a place where Rome lived on, not in stone, but in soul. The great city of Constantine still shone in the east. Its domes sparkled in the morning sun. Ships moved gently in and out of the harbor. Their sails rose like wings against the sky. But far away, in the older parts of the empire, time was moving slowly. Not forward, not backward, just gently, like leaves in a quiet stream. The empire was changing, but life did not stop. In small villages, the sun still rose. Farmers opened their doors. They stepped outside and looked at the sky. Was it clear today? Would the crops grow well? In the markets, traders arranged their goods. Jars of olive oil, baskets of figs, silks that came from far away. Coins changed hands. Smiles passed between neighbors. By the sea, fishermen pulled in their nets. Their faces were weathered by time and salt, but their hearts were steady. They had done this work since their father's time. Children still played. Their games were simple, chasing each other through dusty streets, skipping stones across the water, laughing with joy, not caring about emperors or wars. In the town, schools opened as usual. Boys sat on stone benches. They held wax tablets and wooden pens. They repeated their lessons softly. Latin, Greek, numbers, history. A teacher walked among them. His robe was old, but his eyes were kind. He corrected mistakes with a soft voice. He told stories of heroes and old battles. But now the children dreamed of quieter things. In quiet corners, monks sat in simple rooms. Their walls were bare. A candle flickered nearby. They held scrolls or books. And in the soft glow, they wrote. Not fast, not loud, but slow and careful. They copied old words. Words of wisdom, words of faith. Outside the monastery, the world moved on. A shepherd walked with his flock. A mother hummed as she baked bread. A potter turned clay on his wheel. In the cities, changes came. Some gates were closed. Some streets were worn. Old statues had cracks. But life did not fade. It simply shifted. There were fewer grand games, fewer great parades, but people still gathered. They sang songs, told stories, lit candles on cold nights. Faith had grown strong now. In many homes, crosses hung by the door. People prayed before they ate. They asked for health, for peace, for their children's future. Some churches were big and grand, with tall arches and stained glass. Others were small and quiet. But in each the air felt still, like a breath held in kindness. The empire, once filled with proud marble and gold, now wore softer colors. But there was beauty still, in the rustle of leaves, in the laugh of a baby, in the way the sky turned orange at sunset. Old soldiers sat near fountains. They remembered battles from long ago. They told their tales to anyone who would listen. But now they liked the quiet more than the glory. Things were different, they'd say, but they did not say it with anger. They said it like one speaks of old songs, with love, with memory. In the east, Constantinople stayed strong. It was a city of light, but in the west the old cities grew slower, their heartbeats quieter. Still, people lived. A boy helped his father fix a broken roof. A girl fed birds near a garden wall. An old man carved wood into a toy horse. No one knew what tomorrow would bring, but they still loved today. Even when news came of invaders, of broken roads, the people kept going. They cooked meals. They held hands. They watched stars at night. Even as the empire bent under weight and time, its people stood gently, not with pride, but with peace. And always the rivers flowed, carrying boats, dreams, and stories. Some said Rome was ending, but that wasn't true. It was changing, softly, slowly, like a season turning. And through it all, the people lived. They loved. They hoped. Because empires may rise and fall. But life carries on like the river. Time passed slowly in the old cities. The world had changed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't sudden. But it was real. The slow fall of the West was like a quiet evening fading into night. In the cities, there were still familiar sounds. The sound of the marketplace. The creak of a cart. The hum of children playing. Yet there was a shift, a sense that something was different. The roads were not as well kept. The great stone walls which once protected the empire began to crumble. They stood tall but weak. The cracks could be seen if one looked closely. A few years earlier, the Visigoths had come. They were not strangers. They had lived on the edges of the empire for a long time. But now they moved deeper. They crossed the river. And when they reached Rome, they did not ask for permission. They took what they wanted. The old city fell quiet. The people in Rome had watched confused as the Visigoths marched through the gates. It was not a battle of swords and fire. It was something more, a slow taking, a moving away from what had been. Yet there was no fear in the streets. There was a stillness. Some stayed, some left. But life carried on, even in the shadow of change. In the gardens, the flowers still bloomed. The birds still flew overhead. The sun still rose day after day. But Rome was not the same. The years passed, and other people came. The Vandals, fierce and proud, swept through Africa. They marched to the heart of the empire. They reached the gates of Carthage, another jewel of Rome, and they took it. The city crumbled, like a house falling into sand. Meanwhile, in the northern lands, a man named Odoacer grew strong. He was a soldier. He had once fought for Rome, but now he saw a new path. Rome was weakened. The city was losing its power. Odoacer with his men entered the gates of Rome. The last emperor, a young boy, was in the city. He didn't have an army to fight back. Rome, the once mighty empire, was no longer ruled by emperors. The man who took the crown was not a Roman. He was a soldier who had once fought for the empire, but now led a new way. There was no great battle. The people did not fight in the streets. Instead, they watched, some with sadness, some with relief. The city was changing, but it was still the same in many ways. The buildings stood tall, even though they were worn. The fountains still bubbled with water. The smell of bread still filled the air. And the people still prayed. They still dreamed, but the old walls had crumbled. Not in a single moment, but over time. The greatness of Rome had slowly faded away. Yet even in that fading, there was beauty. Even in the quiet moments of change, life continued. The market still opened in the morning. The sun still set over the hills. And though the empire had fallen, the stories remained. The stories of the gods. The stories of the heroes. The stories of the battles fought and the cities built. Rome may have fallen, but its stories lived on. In the homes, in the hearts of the people, the memories of Rome stayed. They were told by parents to their children. They were whispered in the shadows of great buildings. And even in the far corners of the world where the empire had never touched, the story spread. The roads, though cracked, still led somewhere. The old places, though worn, still stood. And as the night fell, the stars still shone bright, just as they had in the days of Rome's greatest glory. Rome had fallen, but life, in its quiet way, carried on. And as it did, the old stories, the ones written in stone, in scrolls in the hearts of the people, stayed. They were never forgotten. They echoed through the centuries, and they still echo today. The empire had changed, but its spirit lived on. The walls may have crumbled, but the stories remained. They remained in the songs, in the words, in the quiet reflections of those who lived in the shadow of the old empire. And so the story of Rome continued. Not in the grand cities of the West, but in the small towns, in the hearts of those who remembered. In the peaceful moments, under the same stars that once shone over a mighty empire, the days of Rome may have passed, but the echoes of its greatness remained. They lingered in the air, soft and quiet, like whispers in the wind. Rome had fallen, but its spirit was still alive. Rome left behind many things, things that would continue even after the walls crumbled. The empire was gone, but its reach was far. One of the first things that survived were the roads. The Romans had built them to connect the empire. They were straight and strong, made of stone and packed earth. They stretched across the lands, from the green hills of Britain to the warm sands of Egypt. Even after the empire fell, those roads stayed. People still walked on them. The roads were the veins of the old empire, carrying stories, people, and goods from one place to another. The roads led to markets, to homes, to cities. They carried life, even in the dark days after Rome fell. The roads carried hope. Then there were the languages. Latin, the language of Rome, lived on. It spread through the lands, even beyond the empire. It changed over time, of course. It turned into different languages, Italian, French, Spanish, and others. But it never truly disappeared. When people spoke, they still carried a little bit of Rome with them. The way they spoke was shaped by the Romans. Their words, their phrases, their sentences, even the names of places, the names of kings, they all had roots in Rome. And then there were the ideas. Rome was built on ideas. Ideas of law, of justice, of order. The Romans believed in fairness. They believed that people should be treated with respect. These ideas stayed too. Even after the empire was no more, people still remembered what Rome had taught them. Roman law, for example, did not end with the empire. The idea that all men are equal before the law, that a person is innocent until proven guilty, that idea lived on in different parts of the world. It was passed down from one generation to the next. The laws that the Romans created were not just for Rome. They became a foundation for future civilizations. Rome also gave the world the idea of citizenship, the idea that a person had certain rights because they were part of a community. This idea spread across the world long after the empire fell. It was an idea that would shape nations, that would give people a voice in the world. But perhaps most of all, Rome left behind its spirit. It was a spirit that could be felt in the art, in the buildings, in the stories. Rome's dreams lived on, in the hearts of those who remembered. And those dreams never truly ended. The stories of Rome were passed down, told by grandparents to their grandchildren, whispered in the halls of churches, sung in the songs of poets. Rome was a dream that never ended. Its influence spread far beyond the city itself, into the hearts of all who had been touched by its light. Rome's greatness was not in its walls or its armies, but in its ideas, its wisdom, and its ability to change the world. Even today, we still feel the presence of Rome, in the way we speak, in the laws that guide us, in the roads we walk on. When we look at the ruins of Rome, we see not just broken stones, but a story that lives on, a story that never truly ends. Rome may have fallen, but in every stone and word, it still whispers. It whispers in the language we speak, in the laws we follow, in the roads that stretch across the land, and in every dream we have. Rome is there, a quiet presence, a reminder that even the greatest empires can leave behind something beautiful, something that lasts forever. The legacy of Rome is not in the empire itself, but in the way it shaped the world. It is in the hearts of those who remember, and in the lives of those who live today, guided by the whispers of the past. Rome, in its quiet way, still lives, not in the city of stone, but in the lives of those who carry its spirit, in the dreams of those who believe in something greater than themselves. Rome is not gone. It is with us in every step we take, in every word we speak, in every law we follow, in every dream we chase. The story of Rome is still being written, and it will never truly end. As we pause, let us take a moment to reflect. Rome was not just a place in time. It was a dream that lived in the hearts of many, and still lives today in the hearts of all of us. Though the great city no longer stands as it once did, its spirit remains, quietly guiding us. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the soft warmth of the Roman sun. Picture the quiet hum of the city, the murmur of the crowds in the marketplaces, The gentle ripple of water in the fountains. You can hear the distant calls of traders, the laughter of children, the footsteps of people walking along the ancient roads. In this moment you are in Rome. You are in peace. Rome is not only in the buildings that remain, but in something much deeper. It is in the way we think, the way we speak, the way we live. Rome has become part of us, woven into the fabric of our being. Its light still shines not in the form of its emperors or armies, but in the art, the laws, and the memories it left behind. When we look at a beautiful painting, or hear a piece of music that stirs our souls, we can feel the touch of Rome. For the Romans were great creators. They built more than buildings. They created beauty that still inspires us. Their art, their poetry, their architecture, it all lives on in the things we create today. Think of the buildings that stand now, in cities across the world. The arches, the columns, the shapes that speak of Rome's influence. Rome gave the world the gift of beauty. And in the art we create, we carry that gift forward. Rome also gave us something else, law. The idea that people should be treated equally, that justice should guide our actions. These principles were born in Rome, and they continue to shape the way we live. The Romans believed in fairness, in the rule of law, in the power of reason. Today, when we speak of justice, when we speak of rights and duties, we are speaking in the language of Rome. It is in the courts, in the books we read, in the discussions we have. Rome's wisdom is in the laws we follow, and in the way we try to create a just world. We carry it with us in our hearts and minds. But perhaps the greatest gift that Rome gave us is the gift of memory. Rome lives in the stories we tell, in the way we remember the past, in the way we honor those who came before us. It is in the names we use, in the lessons we teach our children, in the ways we gather around the fire to share stories. Rome is in every story, in every legend, in every memory. So when we close our eyes, when we think of the past, we can still feel Rome. It is not lost to us. It is within us, carried in the way we live and think. It is in the quiet moments of reflection, in the soft hum of daily life. You are in Rome now. Not in the past, not in the ruins, but in the present. The light of Rome still shines. It shines in our hearts, in our minds, in the world around us. It shines in the art we create, the laws we follow, the stories we tell, and it will never fade. Rome is a part of us, a part of who we are and who we will always be. It will continue to guide us, quietly, gently, as we move through the world, carrying its light with us. Rome was not just a place in history. It was a seed planted deep within us, a seed that continues to grow, a seed that will never stop blooming. So when you open your eyes again, remember this. Rome is not gone. It is in you. It is in all of us. And as long as we carry its light, it will never truly fade. The story of Rome, in all its beauty and wisdom, is still being written. It lives in the hearts of those who remember, in the dreams of those who believe, and in the peaceful whispers of the past. Rome is with us always, in the soul,